Can you hear past my words? I am still the same person. I am the guy that made you laugh. I'm the guy that walked by your side. I am the guy you camped with, the guy that watched you work on your car. I am the guy that helped you move, that babysat your children. Can you hear past my words? I am still the same person. I grew up, I was born in Joliet, Illinois, pretty much the majority of my life in the Joliet area. New Lenox, Mokina, Frankfort, very small. Grew up in a United Church of Christ. We weren't a particularly religious family. We went to church on Sundays. We all went to Sunday school. If there were any special events at church, we attended. But it wasn't a lot of God wants this or God doesn't want this in your life or anything. I mean, there was just not a lot of discussions. I started having same-sex feelings when I was probably about 13, 14 years old, maybe 12, somewhere in there. And I wasn't sure how to process them because I didn't know anybody that had these kind of feelings. I never felt like I was safe to share it with anybody. I felt like it had to be a big secret. Just the jokes that I would hear classmates saying about teachers who they thought might be faggots. You know, the terms that other kids used, the phrases, the way they looked down on other people. I was afraid of being judged, beaten up. I didn't feel like anybody was safe that I could share it with, how I was feeling and what I was thinking. I thought I was the only person in the world that felt that way because everybody else, seemed to have these incredibly normal lives. It just really felt unsafe to me that why would I open up and share things with them and open myself up to be a target as well. That was through high school. So when I was 15, I became a Christian. A lot of my walk as a Christian at 15 years old was reading the Bible. That was the only education, the only guidance I got. So in reading the Bible and reading those verses in the Bible, those 6 verses, and I'm like, I want to be a Christian. I want to be as close to God as I can. God hates this thing. So I was constantly reminding myself, God hates this. And plus processing, being that I'm on my own, nobody to talk to, I process it as, God will hate me if I'm like this. Most of my stereotypes that I had to break and deal with come from, for 2 years we lived in California. Lived in Southern California in the late 70s when AIDS was first being, discussed and coming out and whatnot. And everybody was talking about the gay lifestyle. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't be like that. I can't be, so sinful and terrible and, just running around sex crazed and everything else. That's not me. So I was just building up these walls for years and years and years that I can't be like those gay people. So turning that all inward, hating myself and being disgusted by that part of myself was really just incredibly hard to walk through. I can't be part of this community. I can't be part of these people. So it's through those kind of stereotypes that most of my ideas were formed. After high school, when I went on to Bible college, I never felt like there was anybody I could really open up and share with there either. Because people were getting kicked out of Bible college for it. Oh yeah, they found out they're gay and they got kicked out of school. Again, who can I talk to as I process through this? I knew there were kids that were suspected of being gay and they were kicked out of college. It seemed like just overnight or over the weekend they would just disappear. I had prayed for God to heal me and bring me healing from this for years and years. And I honestly felt that if I could just get married and have sex with a woman, God would just cure it, take all those feelings away, and I would be truly sanctified and saved. And this burden, this thorn in my flesh would be removed, and I'd be able to go on. That didn't happen. Can you hear past my words? I am still the same person. The guy that gave his heart to the Lord at 15. The guy that was teaching Bible studies at home and Sunday school at church at 17 before going to Bible college. The guy who toured around the U.S. and England ministering in Christian drama. Can you hear past my words? I am still the same person. Repression is one word, denial may be another word, that covers that whole area of my life. I knew I had feelings, and I thought as long as I bury those feelings, ignore them, and push on through the good, straight life, because that's God's plan for us to be straight and to get married and multiply. I really felt like He was going to bless that and use that, and, as I lived the life that I thought He wanted me to, I thought He would just take all these feelings away. I went off to Bible college in '87. So still involved in healthcare, still working in healthcare and going to Bible college. And it was '87 where I met my wife. So the whole focus was just on being in the closet and keeping everything as far away as possible from me and keeping myself appearing and looking and acting as straight as possible. But the whole challenge of having these same-sex feelings was just like Paul's thorn in the flesh, that this was something that I just had to deal with until God healed it and took it away. I honestly felt that, one, society and everybody talks about how sex with a woman is the most earth-shattering, incredible thing that there is. And that, two, if I would just make that step in faith, that God would honor it. And that if I marry a woman and have sex with a woman, that God is going to cure me instantly, and that all these prayers that I had had for all these years before I got married, that God would take all that, that He would honor it, and that He would heal me. And I've met people, in their 20s all the way up to 70 years old who are still dealing with the same thing and processing it through. The normal thing in society is that a man marries a woman. That's God's plan. That's God's only option, is what everybody believes and walks in. This is it. Man and woman get married and have children. It's like so many other things, fake it until you make it. Just have faith. Can you hear past my words? I am still the same person. I have made mistakes. I am a sinner saved by God's grace. I am so far from perfect, but God still loves me. I've been wrong before. I will be wrong again. Can you hear past my words? I am still the same person. As I started this journey, I was 49 years old, and it was in the fall. As I started processing through and asking these questions and praying, and God, show me how this all fits together. My wife had been sick for a couple of years, and she, in taking care of her all the time and taking care of my job as a healthcare worker, and just constantly taking care of everybody all the time and really working too much at taking care of everybody else, I started feeling lost in the whole thing. Who am I and where am I? And this question was still nagging at me. Am I gay? Am I straight? Am I bisexual? Am I just curious? Where do I lie in all this, and who am I? Really, that was a question that I felt I needed to answer. So I put an ad out on Craigslist and found a volunteer rather quickly who was willing to help me discover, this about myself. And it only took 5 minutes to figure out, no, I'm gay. No ifs, ands, or buts, no questions. I'm not bi, I'm not straight, I'm not curious, I am gay. In January, I turned 50. In February of that year, just a few months after this process started, and after I got a couple books under my belt, I came out to my pastor, to my wife, and to my daughter. And interestingly enough, sitting over there in my pastor's office and explaining all this to him and coming out to him and that I had had an affair with a man and everything. After explaining and going into all this detail, he looked at me and he says, I'm such a sinner too. Who am I to judge you for what you've done or haven't done? There is no condemnation of who I am or how I'm identifying. The fact that the affair, yes, that was sinful. I confess that. I would not debate that with anybody. He had been preaching for over 2 years on not judging people, on just loving people. So I thought, okay, here's the test. Here's the first person I'm actually going to tell that I will open this secret up to that I've kept for so long and see what the response is. And he responded with love. And he has gone to the Gay Christian Network conference with me this last January. He and his wife, they thought it was an amazing time meeting so many other gay Christians and hearing their stories. And there are several people in the congregation that do know now, and they're vastly supportive of the whole thing. Still their questions, still working their way through things, but they've been very loving and very supporting through it all. Obviously, when I came out to my wife, she was just very hurt and shaken to her core for the fact that we had been married for 20 years, and I'd been keeping the secret for over 20 years. So it's been a long journey of processing for her, because she as well, has had to process all of her stereotypes through this whole thing. Definitely she's had her ups and downs through the whole thing, but overall she's been learning and opening up as well to it. Last July, after the Evangelical Network Conference, we started talking to about divorce and should be divorced later this year. We're not rushing into anything, because I figure that's more hurt on top of the hurt that I've given her already, but we are planning and working our way through it. Can you hear past my words? I am still the same person. I have ministered to your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your children. I have ministered to you. God has used me in the past. He will use me in the future. Can you hear past my words? I am still the same person. The challenge for me, I knew that I was gay, but I also know without a doubt how much I love the Lord and that I am a Christian. One of the things that I know that didn't change and that's always constant is how much God loves me. That has not changed. I know that He loves me and accepts me. For so many years, as I was processing all this, I'm like, ooh, if I admit this, God's just going to hate me, So I got to the point where it's like, no, God does love me then, He loves me now, He'll love me in the future. That part hasn't changed. The struggle was, how do I put these together? How do I recognize that I'm gay, and how do I recognize that I'm a Christian, and figure out what does a great gay Christian, or what does a Christian who's gay look like? So trying to figure that out. It didn't make me question my faith, but it did make me question what I believe about the scriptures that I've read. So I've done a lot of research and reading through other people's opinions on those 6 scriptures. 200 years ago, people believed that women should be quiet in church and cover their heads and everything, and it wasn't even really debated and discussed and whatnot. So it took time to get to that point and process through that. 100 years ago, there were churches that believed slavery was okay because the Bible's got rules on how to take care of your slaves and treat your slaves. There's all these rules and all these things that are said, but people are willing to put those into historical and social context to interpret those verses. But nobody wants to take the verses about homosexuality or about being gay. Nobody wants to take those into the historical and the social context. So I think it's just a progression of church through history. And it's not that God changes, but it's that people's understanding and interpretations change. Finding the balance in it and just really praying it through for myself to find the balance in that and to find out what I believe and to hear it from God, to understand it from God's point of view and to hear from God in this whole relationship rather than just what somebody tells me about God. Can you hear past my words? I am still the same person. I still like to cook and I don't mind cleaning. I still enjoy being with people and getting to know them. I am still the guy that remained a virgin till I was 28 and I was married. Can you hear past my words? In the last couple of years, as I've been coming out to people, I get a lot of, "Oh yeah, I always thought so." One lady, one nurse that I worked with for years and years, she says, "Yeah, I always thought so. The show tunes that you'd sing at work kind of gave you away." Another person was like, "Oh yeah, I figured that out a long time before you did." My mother said, "Yeah, I always thought so." I went to an 8th grade graduation, and people there, I found out a year later, people there were shocked not only that I came with a woman, but that I had a daughter. So people had always put this together for years and years before I ever did. Before I even really knew what homosexuality was. Before 8th grade, they had it figured out that I was. And I had no idea what it even meant at the time. There are people that throughout the years had accused me of being gay. And I remember one day at work, working in a dialysis unit, and one of the nurses said, "Are you sure you're not gay?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, of course I'm not gay. I'm married. I have a child." And the big one, "I'm a Christian." So I couldn't be gay. Oh yeah. The guilt and shame that comes over those statements now is almost unbearable at times. I regret never telling my wife and opening up to my wife through all these years and then just throwing these surprises at her. If I had ever had any kind of intimacy, open and honest intimacy with a man before I got married, I probably never would have gotten married to a woman. If I had come even close to processing this. I have a lot of regret for never sharing, never opening up to my wife about this, about taking her into a marriage where she was not given all the facts beforehand. So there's a lot of regret and a lot of pain in that. One of the things that's hard to find the balance in is the fact that, yes, I regret the pain and the suffering that I've caused her for not being open, not being honest with her. But at the same time, I got this beautiful, wonderful daughter out of this. So how do you have all this regret, but then have all this joy in the same situation? Where do you draw that line, and how do you deal with having the regret and pain, but having all the joy at the same time? So it's really a hard place to find balance in how to express the regret without that overshadowing and darkening the relationship of the joy. For me personally, the two things that a couple things that I feel very sorry for is the fact that I judged everybody by the stereotypes that I heard for so long. And that's what kept me in the closet. It's because I was busy judging them, and by judging them by, false standards and whatnot, I was judging myself too. Well, if I accept that I'm gay, that means I accept all, these stereotypes, and I've got to live like this too. Oh no, I can't be like them. So I really, I'm sorry for that, for judging the way I had. I'm also sorry that it took me until I was 49 years old to come out. Because if I had come out earlier, I'm thinking, how could I have influenced and encouraged other people who were struggling in the same way? I think back through the whole Stonewall thing and through all the fights, for rights and everything over the years. I feel almost guilty at sometimes that I was sitting back safe in a closet while everybody else was fighting the fight. And then I just come out and walk into it and go, here I am now, after everybody else has shed blood over this thing. I know there are people out there who are struggling and dealing with. I know that there are families out there that have people in their family who don't know how to process and deal with the thought that somebody might be gay and a Christian. and they don't know how to do it. They need somebody to talk to. I think I can be a great resource for a whole lot of people, older, younger, middle age, whatever, for someone to talk to who's been through this journey. And I think I can bring some education where education is needed, but I also think I can bring some love and some hugs and a lot of heart to it to encourage people along the way as well. The thing is, when you're living that fake name it and claim it life, when you're living under those beliefs of, if I just act this way, then I can be this person, or I can change this thing. When you're putting those clouds and those layers of acting and being something else, and being somebody that you're not, in an effort to obtain who you think you should be, you're living a lie. I'm not going to live that lie anymore. And I'm not going to expect other people to walk alongside me while I'm living that lie. Can you hear past my words? Yes, I am gay, but I'm still the same person. Can you hear my heart? I just like who I am now.